Hello, and welcome to the Library at a Distance webinar series. This is the first of three series that we're offering through April 23rd. My name is Sharon Shannon, and I am the Student Support Services Coordinator with the UGA Office of Online Learning. I will be your moderator for today, and our presenters are Diana Howto, and she is the coordinator of public service with the Science Library, and John Prechtel is the business and economic librarian for the University Libraries. A few housekeeping announcements. Your microphone or audio rather should be on mute. If it's not muted, please do so. And also, we will have an opportunity for you to ask questions. If you look at the control panel and notice that there's a chat box there, if you will type your questions in that chat box, we'll hold them until the end. So we'll have time to finish the webinar in a timely manner. And then finally, there are handouts also in the handouts section of the control panel. And lastly, we will record this session, and the recording will be available to all attendees at a later time. So with that said, I will pass it on to Diana to start the webinar.
Great, thank you, Sharon. Hi, everybody. We're so happy to have you join us today as we navigate this new teaching and learning environment. I speak on behalf of UGA Libraries staff and faculty when I say that we remain committed to supporting your research needs. We realize there will be challenges, but we will be your partner in navigating any obstacles you may encounter in this online world. With that being said, I'd like to start today with our title slide. So we're going to be focusing on a resource guide that we've created for COVID-19 and how the library is handling that. So our outline today is to look at that guide and talk about different things that we've gathered there for you. So we'll be looking at some databases. We'll look at ways to access relevant databases for your subject area and also introduce you to our multi-search, a multidisciplinary database suited for researchers from any field. So no matter what you're doing research on, you should be able to get good sources in our multi-search. We'll also look at the resource guide where we will point you to ebooks and other resources. A lot of publishers and databases have released additional ebook, online journal, and streaming video content. They realize that libraries are closing their doors, so they have opened their portals and provided more electronic content than we had before. We'll also talk about some other online tools we have to help you at a distance, as well as using interlibrary loan to find journal articles and book chapters that we don't have available through our own subscriptions. Finally, we will review the different ways you have for receiving help from library staff, whether by chat or directly emailing your own subject-specific librarian. So first off, we're going to talk about databases. As a reminder, we'll be going through this COVID-19 resource guide. That guide is available from our library homepage. So we have it featured prominently on that homepage. And then, of course, we've got the link here at the bottom of all of our slides. So we will go there now. Okay, so we developed this guide to provide a cohesive way to communicate what we have available at this time. Things are changing. A couple weeks ago, our doors were open somewhat, so people could actually pick up print materials. But with the recent mandate from the governor, we've closed our doors to the public. So now we're keeping track of all of those different things that are going on in relation to the pandemic here. But we're going to work under this resources and services for students. And we're going to talk about just a couple of these things under here, just so you know the best way to do research from a distance. So one of the things we have is something called the multi-search. This isn't a new tool. We've had this for a while now. It may not be new to you either. But in case you've never used it, it's a really good resource for finding any kind of information on any subject area. When I click on that link, you'll notice up here it does not immediately recognize me as a UGA affiliate. So I'll click on that. It'll prompt you to log in with your username and ID, same thing you use for email, for ELC, all of those different things that you log into through UGA. So you'll use that same mechanism to log into a lot of our resources as well. So the multi-search has all sorts of different kinds of resources. It'll have books, book chapters, theses, dissertations, that peer-reviewed journal article. So in a lot of cases, maybe your professor has asked you to find peer-reviewed journal articles when you're writing your own papers. So all of that's going to be available to you in the multi-search. We will be covering this source as well as ways to get to ebook content in next week's seminar, but I did want to just give a quick intro, and we'll do a quick search in here as well. So if you were doing research on the topic of food deserts, you could come into the multi-search and search that as your topic. So one of the nice things that the multi-search does is it provides what's known as a research starter. So if you needed a little bit of background information about your topic, you can do a very general search in this database. And if it has one of these research starters, this is a really good place to come to get some initial information. So if I click on this here, basically what I've got here is an encyclopedic essay about food deserts. So it gives me just a little bit of a definition, some background, an overview, and then even down here at the bottom, we've got a bibliography. So these might be a good place to get started with your own research. We'll go back to our results here. So the other nice thing in here is if you knew that you needed peer-reviewed or scholarly journal articles, you've got that link right over here. So you can click on that and immediately those results will get taken down to just those that are from peer-reviewed journal articles. So this brings us down. This is a pretty well-researched topic. So we've got 20,000 results in here. As you scroll through, you'll notice that some of the articles within here have the PDF right here attached in the database. So that full text is just going to be a click away. As you scroll down though a little bit, sometimes you may be presented with this Find It at UGA button. So that button will take us out and see if we have electronic access through some other source other than the multi-search. So at this point, since our library doors are closed, really that electronic access is going to be the only way to get access to these materials, that and interlibrary loan, which John will talk a little bit about shortly. But that's just a very quick intro to the multi-search. It can pretty much be your one-stop shop for all of the different kinds of research you may need as you're researching from a distance. So we'll go back to our homepage, or back to the guide. And back to that resources and services for students. So another popular database is Google Scholar. Remember that you should always go to Google Scholar from either this COVID-19 resource guide or from our homepage. We actually have a link to Google Scholar right there on our homepage. And by going in through that portal, it's going to link you in with our UGA subscribed content. We've recently made an enhancement to the way that linking is done, so it should be a little bit more seamless than it has been in the recent past. So we scroll down here a little bit more. One other thing I want to point out is this databases by subject. So if I click on that, that multi-search is great because it is multidisciplinary, but you may decide that you want to get to a database that's more refined or more specific for your own research. Maybe you're an anthropology student, so you can come here and click on this anthropology. This is going to tell you the best databases to use for anthropology. So we have databases that only cover anthropology literature, Anthropology Plus, AnthroSource. So those might be a better place to get to find your research. You'll also see who your librarian is. So if you needed some more subject-specific help, you could come here and email Diane to get additional help. Okay. So we'll go back to our slideshow here. So that's the databases. The next thing we'll talk about is how to access books and other materials at a distance. In next week's seminar, we're going to take some more time to talk about finding ebooks through our own catalog. So we have a catalog of library materials, and there's ways that you can search in that catalog and just find ebooks. We're also next week going to talk about a resource called Howto Trust. It's a partnership that we have. They provide some digital content, but just recently they've opened up a lot more of their digital content. So in that resource, they actually are covering about 40% of our print materials. So 40% of our print collection is now represented in Howto Trust in ebook format, and that's a new development because of COVID-19. But we'll talk about both of those a little bit more next week. I did want to go ahead and give you those links so that you can go in there and find additional information or additional books that you may be looking for. We'll go back to our resource guide. And again, under this resources and services for students, we're going to work now under this temporary extended access to online resources. So as I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of publishers and database vendors are providing additional content for students now. Again, they realize that libraries have closed their doors, so they want to make sure that that content is available to students and faculty who are now at a distance and can't access print materials. So like I said, we'll talk more about Howto Trust next week. But I want to point out just a couple of those that we thought would be of interest to students. And one of those is Red Shelf textbooks. Through a partnership with the UGA bookstore, Red Shelf Textbooks is offering free e-textbooks from participating publishers to students and faculty. You do need to go in there and set up an account using your UGA email address, but once you've done that, you can add up to 7 titles to a digital shelf. And of note, if you need access to the APA publication manual, maybe you're needing to write something and you need the APA style guide, that is available in Red Shelf textbooks, along with lots and lots of other textbooks and other academic titles. Another one, and I'm just kind of pulling out a couple of these here, Georgia Open Stacks. This is something that University of Georgia Press has done. They've opened up some of their book content specifically for those books that are used in history and humanities courses. So that another place you can go and look for content. As we scroll through here a little bit more, I'll also mention this JOVE, which stands for the Journal of Visualized Experiments. This is a good place to go if you want to view experiments. So they've got some basic experiments, some more in-depth experiments in here, but a good place to go to learn key concepts and fundamental techniques. If you're missing being in that laboratory environment, this Jove science education videos can help replicate that for you. Again, in here, you would need to set up an account using your UGA email address. But there's lots of different, that I just cherry picked a couple of those. But if you're having trouble accessing content, come here because there's a lot of good information available through this source. Okay, so I think next up we've got John, and he's going to talk a little bit more about some other tools that'll be of use to you.
Well, thank you, Diana. Yes, I'd like to continue with the next section of the webinar. And first up, we're going to talk about a couple of resources that are linked on the COVID guide as well as on our homepage that can be used as sort of supplemental as forms of assistance with the research process, in addition to the things Diana was just speaking about. And the first thing I'd like to talk about are the how-to guides. And we have a web page that we can go to that where they're all listed. And what the how-to guides essentially do is they provide very specialized kinds of guidance on various topics that can be related to research, anywhere from what the best databases are for certain types of information that you might not always think about, but you might come up against it when you're doing your researches. For example, in the popular box over there in the upper left, there's one called videos, images, and audio. And so if you had questions about what databases do we offer that provide videos, or where can you find and search for images? Lots of times in humanities projects, you need to find images of statues or buildings or whatever. And there's, of course, we know you can search the web, but there's also other more formal databases where you can often get better quality images or whatever. So a guide like this just helps you find ways to get to that information. Another type of guide, how-to guide that could be of use, and I'm just picking on one here, is in the tools and tutorials box. There's one called creating direct, or it's just, I guess it's entitled direct links to articles, journals, and databases. And you might be saying to yourself right now, what does that mean anyway? Well, when you're searching those resources that Diana was describing or demonstrating for you, a lot of times you'll get to an article, and let's say you have a question that you want to follow up with us about, and you want to refer to that article. It's a good idea if you come to this guide and learn how to create a direct URL to that article, because when you first find the article in your browser using our resources, if you pick that URL, very often if you try to use it again, it won't work for you. So you're better off using one of these URLs. So I don't want to make that sound like it's something all really difficult and that has to be a stumbling block for you. But if someone asks you to create a link to that article, this little guide is waiting for you to consult and tell you exactly how to do it. It's not difficult, but it's a lot of times it's not self-evident. So there are many how-to guides on that page, and I encourage you to look at them sometime at your leisure just to get generally familiar with the kinds of how-to guides we've created. And there may be more appearing as the weeks and months go by. Okay, so the other type of supplemental resource or service that we provide at UGA Libraries is called interlibrary loan. Interlibrary loans general business on a year-round basis is both borrowing and lending materials. We don't own everything under the sun, and other libraries don't own everything under the sun. So in essence, we share our collective collections and lend things to each other. Right at the present time in our current environment, since our buildings aren't open, what we can still do is we can attempt to borrow articles that are digital and book chapters from books which are digital if we don't own them. So the Interlibrary Loan Office still has a form that's up and running. I won't go into how it works today, but if you go to when you get this guide, if you go to the Interlibrary Loan office link, there's instructions there in case you need to borrow something. Of course, in your research, the first thing to do is to make sure that we don't actually own it, either the article or perhaps the book in digital format, because we do have access to an awful lot right now. And if we do have it, then that's the way to go. But if you find we really don't have it, feel free to attempt to borrow it via interlibrary loan. They're working remotely, as are we, so it is really just limited to digital items. They're not able at the present time to scan articles that we own only in print. Unfortunately, that's just not an option. But other than that, if it's digital and someone else owns it, you can certainly attempt to get it through interlibrary loan. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to move on to slide 6, because what we're going to get into now are the ways you can get personal assistance from one of us. We have a large staff of research and instruction librarians, and we each have our own little subject specialty area. But even before you get to that stage, if you have a question about anything really, but especially briefer, more factual, known item type questions, do you have this, or I can't get into that, the thing to use is our chat reference, Chat with a Librarian feature. And you've probably already noticed it on many of our pages. And if we go just as we've done here to our home page and scroll down a little bit, and you will see over on the right, you will see the Chat with a Librarian feature. And if it looks like that, where it's the red speech bubble and it says Chat with a Librarian, that means we're open for business, and you can just click on there and start a chat with a librarian. If you don't see it open, you want to see when it's open, you can click on the chat hours down there in the lower right, and it will give you a breakdown of what the hours are that week. As I mentioned, chat reference questions are generally best handled if they're fairly brief. If you get into a chat reference question with something that turns out to be more complex, the chat reference librarian will let you know, and they will possibly transfer it to a subject specialist, to one of the other librarians who may know a little bit more about the topic, or may ask a whole bunch of us. Sometimes someone on chat says, does anybody know anything about this? And if we know the answer right away, they might get back to you, but they might have to take your contact information, like ask you for an email. Don't be surprised if that occasionally happens, but it doesn't hurt to start with chat. And like I say, chat is staffed by a rotating cast of characters, so it's not always the same person on chat at the same hour each day. So if you do one chat and do one later, please don't assume that next person will remember or know what you were talking about earlier, because it's probably a different person by then. But anyway, that's one way to get in touch with us for individual assistance. The next way is by simply emailing using that centralized email link, which takes you to a form that you can fill out with your questions. This is sort of like in lieu of chat. If you prefer email, by all means use it. You see how that form actually filled out with Diana's information right away. So whether it'll probably fill out with yours, but if it doesn't, you just need to fill that out, and you have plenty of space down there to type your question in. And that is monitored by someone on a daily basis, especially on weekdays. And if they can answer that question right then and there, they will. If they think they need to also transfer it on to someone with more subject expertise, they'll do that as well. You'll get your answer one way or the other, and so do feel free to use email. The third way that I want to mention that you can get help is a little more in depth. It's to have an individual research consultation with one of the subject specialist librarians. And there's several ways in which one of those can be initiated. One of them is because of, as I mentioned, if a chat question gets too complex, or if an email question is too complex and it has to be transferred to a subject specialist, that subject specialist, if they find they can't even answer it, the nature of the question, due to the nature of the question, they can't answer it immediately. They think it would be better to meet with you. They might propose to you that you all have a meeting, and they'll just arrange with you directly. Another way is you can initiate the meeting. And by the way, you can initiate a meeting not just because you have an immediate research problem that you need to have straightened out. You could initiate a meeting because you're just brand new to the university system and you want to get a personal orientation similar to what we're doing now, but on a more personalized basis, perhaps based on your subject area. You can also use email that way. You can submit an email and say, I would like to set up a individual research consultation, but it's not in any particular subject area. And someone there will suggest someone to meet with. But if you know your subject area and it is research related, come to this page and find the school or college in which your course is located, and then just click on that. So if we went with the School of Social Work, let's say you're in a social work course and you got to do a paper on social work and you just really need to know the best sources to use, or you have a specific research problem, just come over here, you click on that, and you'll see right there that Amber Prentice is your librarian to contact for individual or group consultation. And there's an email there. Just utilize that email, and you and she will work out the rest of it for setting up the meeting. Now, our meetings, when they occur, our consultations in this current environment, they're all going to be online, and we usually use Zoom software. It's possible some other variety of software will be used by specific librarians who all have familiarity with a variety of things, and perhaps you have a preference, whatever. But in general, it'll probably be a Zoom meeting, and they work very well. You can share screens, you can look at what each other are searching and get an idea. You can even record your session for later reference. So we encourage you to do that. That was what I wanted to cover today, and that basically wraps up the content we were planning to cover on this particular webinar. And with that, I'm just going to ask if any of my colleagues, Diana or Sharon, have anything to add, and turn it over to them.
I think that covers it. Thank
Excellent.
you, Sharon. Sharon, did we have any questions?
No, we don't have any questions for our presenters today. So with that said, we will end the webinar at this time. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.